Hello, everyone. My name is Sean Shaw, and this is Vanguards of Democracy. I had the distinct pleasure to talk with Travis Brooks, a local real estate broker and the president of the Tampa chapter of National Association of Real Estate Brokers organization. We did a deep dive into NARAB's mission and their commitment to racial equity in the housing market. Their annual convention that includes celebrating 75 years as an organization is being held right here in Tampa, where the organization was founded. Home and property ownership affects all aspects of our community. As we all know, it's a hot topic in today's market. And most importantly, Travis Brooks is my fraternity brother. But first, I sat with Caprice Edmonds, Pinellas County School Board member. Pinellas County has a new superintendent this year whose agenda will be to help the culture and climate in the school district to the benefit of educators, students, and their families. We also talk about the importance of representation and the recruitment efforts to have Black male role models in the district. This is an episode you don't want to miss. Welcome to Vanguards of Democracy. This is Sean Shaw, and I've got a friend of mine here, as I often do, who's in politics. Not so much, but she's on the school board, and I'm a big fan of hers. It's Caprice Edmonds from Pinellas County. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
And just so y'all know, Pinellas is the county right next to Hillsborough, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, and all that good stuff. But Caprice is a member of the school board, and I just want you to kind of tell people, what do you do as a school board member? What are your responsibilities? Because it's gotten a little controversial to be on the school board these days. So let's talk about it.
It sure has gotten controversial, but our responsibilities is to govern. So we hire and fire the superintendent. We maintain the budget, making sure that we're being fiscally responsible. We approve contracts, policies, the student code of conduct, and things of that nature.
How long have you been on the school board?
Almost 2 years.
You like it?
I love it.
I know you do. Why did you want to be on the school board?
You know, before the 2020 election cycle, I was a teacher. So working.
What grade or what age?
Elementary. Okay. I was a science coach and science lab teacher at Fairmont Park Elementary, which so happens to be the school I attended as a little girl. I have 4 kids. 2 of them graduated since I've been on the board. And just hearing concerns from community members, parents, myself as an educator and other educators, that led me to run. I thought about ways that I could make an impact in the policies and procedures, as well as the academics that we have within Pinellas County Schools. So I decided to run.
Caprice, what were the issues that you ran on the first time? What were the specific issues that you wanted to do business about on the school board?
Equity in education.
What does that mean?
That means ensuring that all students have the resources and support that they need in order to be successful.
And let me dig a little deeper in that. I know what you mean. No matter where you live.
No matter where you live.
You ought to be have the same access to education.
Gender, sexual orientation, race, socioeconomic status, the whole gamut, whether you're a gifted learner or student with disabilities.
Here in Florida, you know where I'm about to go.
Yes, I
do. Here in Florida, and my podcast listeners know where I'm about to go. Here in Florida, we are, let me say, we're good at being bad. Let me say that. You don't have to say that. But the legislature has recently passed some very controversial things, one of which is the prohibition of the teaching of what they believe, what they call critical race theory. What is critical race theory? I shouldn't say that. Do y'all teach critical race theory in Pinellas County? Have you ever taught it in Pinellas County schools?
So critical race theory is not a K through 12 standard, and we follow the standards provided by the Florida Department of Education.
Bingo. And I'm going to stop there because it's another podcast where I will rant and rave about the legislature. But what you just said is important. We ban something that ain't taught anyway. Okay. You're running for re-election right now. Talk to me about what issues you see on the horizon. What's important? You all just hired a superintendent, right?
Yes,
right.
We have a new superintendent. His name is Kevin Hendrick, and I'm looking forward to his leadership. He's bringing forth a new look of things, as well as being more open-minded and ensuring that all stakeholders feel like their voices are heard. One of his big initiatives is culture and climate. And we all know that recruitment and retention, as well as academic success, only happens when the culture and climate is good within a district, within a school, within a classroom. So I look forward to hearing more about his plan and supporting that work.
When you were teaching elementary school and science, like you're a politician now. When you're on the school board, you don't want to say it, but you're a politician now. What do you think about it? Not just the school board, what do you think about politics in general? Because these days, it's tough. Being an elected official in any capacity is hard these days.
And you just took the words from my mouth. Politics is hard. You have to choose your battles at sometimes, and sometimes you have to go out on a limb and fight for what you believe in, regardless of what it might look like or how many negative phone calls or emails that you receive. You have to stand up for what's right. This election cycle is a lot different from the 2020 election cycle, as it's more politically divided. And as you know, school boards are supposed to be nonpartisan, and that has caused a little strain. And I've worked hard to be, myself, but also be open-minded. So that has been one of the challenges, from the critical race theory to the parental rights to the House Bill 1557 and things like that. It's causing some tension.
And the pandemic and the masks.
Yep, I was going there.
Yeah.
On top of having the pandemic and health concerns throughout it, many educators and support professionals resigned. Parents pulled their children from public schools and put them into private schools that had a mask requirement. So
it's tough. And here in Florida, and I'm sure it's happening elsewhere, you guys are subject to protests at school board meetings now. You're subject to kind of a lot of attention that usually wasn't placed on school board members, but you all are front and center now because of masks, because of the bill that's called Don't Say Gay, because of critical race. In Florida, there's just a lot of controversy around that. And I've seen the Hillsborough County school board meetings, and they're packed with people that want to yell and scream one way or the other. That's new. That wasn't the case pre-pandemic. And I know that's not what a lot of school board members ran for. They ran because they were former teachers, their parents. They want to do good for the school, and they don't want to be legislators. They don't want to be in politics. And I know that's got to be frustrating, but here we are, right?
Yes, here we are. And the fact of the matter is, maybe people did need to wake up and see what was going on with our schools. I think it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to provide the truth of what's really happening and how we can improve together. I think that as we move forward, we'll learn that just some of the things that are being mandated down, it's like, okay, we were already providing access to the curriculum. Our textbooks come or are approved by the Department of Education. Parental rights, people can ask the teacher or tell the teacher they don't want their child to check out this book or participate in this, and things are negotiated or accommodations are made. So I think we'll just see that people are learning more about the processes of what's in place because they didn't know.
The way that politics has infected the school board and the court system, to me, is some of the most disturbing stuff that we got going on. Like I'm fine with senators, Congress people, representatives yelling at each other. That's how democracy is. But I don't like just how there's school board members in Florida that have just resigned and have left because of how much abuse they were getting about mandates and masks and things. And that's just not. This is about the kids. We shouldn't be arguing about the kind of things we argue about in Tallahassee and DC. This is just about kids.
And recently, the governor signed a law saying you can't protest at folks' house. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And in Pinellas County, I know you mentioned Hillsborough County, But I've seen a decline in the amount of people that come to our school board meetings because the public comments are no longer streamed. So that...
Oh, so they can't shine. Is that what you're saying?
So that has led to people just not showing up.
Right.
I think it's important that those comments are captured, but yeah.
You represent what segment of Pinellas? What area?
South County, which includes South County except for the beaches, which includes Gulfport, Lellman, Kenneff City, South Pasadena, before you go to Treasure Island, and a little bit of downtown St. Pete as well. You
represent a lot of the African-American population
yes.
on the school board. Because I want to talk about an issue where, unfortunately, across the state, we are overrepresented, and that's school suspensions and punishments, right? Like, when you look at the statistics, children of color are way overrepresented when it comes to suspensions and punishments versus how much they make up in the population. Can you talk about that issue and maybe what we can do to help that?
Yes. So in Pinellas County, about 18% of our different demographics are African American. And there's a disparity, as you mentioned, in arrests. I think it goes back to training. How are we training, or what professional development are we providing teachers and support professionals? What structure or that climate and culture within the classroom, within the schools, within the district? What resources and supports are we providing families who may need additional support for their children in school as well as out school? And then looking at, as it relates to those resources, is there a diagnosis or undiagnosed situation or disability that is impeding the behavior or academic success of that child that leads to those behavior concerns? We also know that the district has implemented PBIS, restorative practices, and several other initiatives to help with behavior, but the pandemic has thrown that off significantly. And we're going to have to focus on mental health, the mental health of our staff as well as our students, because it's been a challenge.
We are, as always, this goes quicker than we think it does, so we're getting to the end, but I want to ask you two things. I want to follow up on that. How are we recruiting specifically Black male teachers?
So I'm glad you asked, and I like to share with you that Pinellas County Schools is working with the University of South Florida in a program called Call Me Mister. So people or Black men enroll into the education program, and they also receive a binder contract, meaning upon completion and becoming a certified teacher, they'll have a job with Pinellas County Schools.
That's awesome. I don't think there's a more important thing than to have a Black male role model teacher around so that someone can see that person. It's how I spend my free time when I'm asked. And I had Black male teachers, and it made a world of difference. And look, it's super important. And I think it's one of the reasons you see that disparity in punishments. We need people that are sensitive to all these types of things. Okay, last one I want to ask you about, and this is one that is unfortunately a way of American life, and it's very disturbing. That's school shootings. What is Pinellas County doing to address it, or safety in schools?
So we've implemented all of the requirements of the laws that passed since the Marjory Stoneman Douglas incident that our legislators have put in place. We've also increased our communications with first responders through, and that's most recently, we replaced the communication system just to streamline that process. And at our next workshop, July 19th, we'll be going over, and this is for the public to hear, so if they'd like to request the audio, we'll be going over the safety measures that can be explained in detail publicly at that meeting, although there are things that can't be shared with the public. The schools have SROs and guardians on campuses. High school, due to the population and size, has 2. Elementary and middle, depending on the size, of the middle school may have 2, but they'll have 1 SRO. And most of our elementary schools have a school resource officer instead of a school police.
No, and I appreciate that. And I don't want to get you in trouble, but I what I'll say is you all can only respond to what the legislature tells you to do. And you can only implement the rules that they believe or what needs to be done. And so y'all don't regulate guns. Y'all don't regulate some of the things that people are having these arguments about. You are just trying to do the best you can under the existence of the legal the law framework that's there.
Yes. And I think it's important to also mention the See Something, Say Something, the anonymous reporting apps that both students, parents, concerned citizens have used, which in my opinion could have saved lives because incidents with guns on campus did not lead to a shooting. So I am grateful for law enforcement, grateful for the people speaking up when they see something. They're saying something.
Hey, I want to hit one more issue, and we were talking about the disparity in suspensions and punishments, Caprice, but talk a little bit about any agreements you might have with law enforcement and other agencies surrounding this topic.
As it relates to policing in school, I know we touched on safety, and we have officers within our schools, which we value, and it's very important. I also know that some community members have raised concerns, and it's actually written in our Bridging the Gap plan as being a point of concern or a goal to reduce the amount of arrest of African American students.
There was a time where Pinellas was the worst place in the state, right, on juvenile and treating juveniles as adults. It was a real problem, I know.
So there has been some progress, and I'd just like to just briefly touch on the interagency agreement between law enforcement agencies in the district, because we receive community feedback as well as feedback from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, which helped strengthen that policy or that contract, making sure that everyone knows their role. What is the rights and responsibility of a student when they're in school? The parents' rights, the teachers' rights, the officer's role, because sometimes officers are called to handle behavior that could be handled by looking at the student code of conduct and assigning a consequence or determining a consequence based on the student code of conduct. So as we look at those issues, I think it's important to look at the things that could be subjective and work on making sure our students know right from wrong and what they're allowed to do, and make sure that officers aren't being called for things that could be handled by school-based staff.
That is super important that you use the word subjective, because that's where the rubber meets the road. And in addition, you want to make sure that the officer responds the same way in an inner city school to a problem that they would respond to a school in the suburbs that has the same problem. The response needs to be the same. We can't overreact because of the school here and underreact because of the school here. That is what you were talking about when we're talking about equity and making sure we do all this the right way. Caprice, I appreciate you coming on. I just want to say, I've always been a fan of yours, and I hope the people that are watching this can see why, that you are someone that clearly ran for the right reason. And you're doing it for the right reason. And I appreciate that, because these days it's hard, as we talked about. This is not fun. This ain't fun stuff to be yelled at. It ain't fun to be up there on a dais and you've kind of made these personal sacrifices to be in office and have people just yell at you. That's not fun. And I know it's hard, but I appreciate you and people like you willing to do it.
It's not fun. It's hard. However, somebody has to do it.
Bingo.
Our children are counting us.
And they need it. All right. Thank you, Caprice Edmonds, school board member in Pinellas County, and my good friend, and I hope she'll be yours too, supporter for the school board. We'll see you next time. Welcome to another episode of Vanguards of Democracy. This is Sean Shaw, and as I've made clear on this podcast, this is an Omega Sci-Fi branded podcast, which means that I have members of Omega Sci-Fi on this podcast. That's my fraternity, and I have another brother here on today, and that is Brother Travis Brooks. He's a good friend of mine. He's a real estate professional here in Tampa. We're going to talk to him about that and about his leadership role in the association that he's got. Brother Brooks, I appreciate you being here with me, man.
No, I appreciate you, T.
No, of course. And like I said, if you want to have someone else, Kappas or Alphas, on a podcast, do your own podcast. This is mine, and we doing the bros today.
And I love it.
I appreciate it, brother. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, like how you got where you are, all that good stuff.
Yeah, man. Actually born right here in Tampa, Florida.
Oh, okay. You're local.
Most of my family's from Tampa. End up being raised in Orlando, between Orlando and Tampa. So I graduated high school in Orlando. Found my way back to Tampa as a member of the inaugural football team at USF in 1996. For those of you that know, that 96 was a year we had about 60 freshmen in the room, wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, man. So that brought me back to Tampa. And unfortunately, those dreams ended with a knee injury, like a lot of individuals. So at that time, like most folks who had a idea that sports was going to be their end-all, be-all, I was a little lost. I didn't know what was going to make of my life. So school, I always knew how to be a student-athlete. I didn't know how to be just a student. So I had to find myself a little bit. So I found myself in the work world and in banking, but it was something in me that wanted to be, I wanted to control my destiny. And I didn't know which route that would go. I tell people all the time, being fired was the best thing ever happened to me. I was working at Chase. And July 31st, 2005, they were having the layoffs. They were outsourcing my department. And they said, either you can move to San Antonio or take the package. Took the package. Got my real estate license that next month. And as they say, the rest has been history.
Talk about from the time you got your license to now, because the real estate market is, right now at least, very hot, so to speak. But talk about the ebbs and flows and how you've been here the whole time, and what kind of company you have now. Or what do you do now? What do you specialize in?
Well, I came in 2005 under Keller Williams initially. Great opportunity to get some good training. And so when I got in part-time for the first couple years, and so when I decided to go full-time, that's when the market tanked. So I didn't know real estate in any other way but a bad market. Right. That was the time mortgage professionals was jumping out, real estate agents was jumping out. Nobody wanted to do short sales because you may have to wait 6 months to a year to get a paycheck. So I got in at a time where you had to work to eat. So now when the market changed in around 2011, 12, and 13 and so forth, I was already equipped for it.
What kind of market are we in now? I want you to talk about, we're going to give a little bit of free advice to
right.
folks. What kind of market are we in now? What should people kind of be thinking about now? Because I know what people tell me, but I'm just a lawyer. I ain't a real estate person. Right. You tell me.
No, out of my 17 years, I will say this has been an unprecedented market. I've never seen a market in this area this hot. And I think, in my professional opinion, we lost a lot of our inventory during the pandemic. You know, that season where everybody would put houses on the market, that springtime, that March, April, May, that's when the pandemic hit. So we lost the inventory and we had historical low interest rates. You're talking about 2.5, 2.875. That's unheard of. So you create a lot more buyers in the market with no inventory. So if I got 100 buyers for every 5 homes, now I'm in bidding wars. I'm in bidding wars, and cash is king. We're in a situation now where our local buyers don't have an opportunity to take advantage of the Tampa market because of our out-of-town buyers.
Talk about that some. Who's buying from out of town? What does that mean?
Well, we know the baby boomers are already in retirement age. And so those Northeast, Virginia, New Jersey, New Yorkers, when the pandemic hit, they were already on the cusp of retiring. So it was like, wait, let me go ahead and just take my money and head down south. So they're able to sell their property and come down with a boatload of cash that we don't have down here. And it pushed a lot of us out of the market.
Is it out-of-town investors? Is it Wall Street investors buying up some of this stock?
So we do have a bevy of hedge funds. Zillow was buying a bunch of properties. Open Door was buying a bunch of properties.
As much as they say mine is worth, they need to buy mine because Zillow say I'm balling.
But they end up getting caught in the end. They bought too many and had to start trying to sell them back. So we do have the hedge funds that's trying to create this rental income.
Right.
But the rental income pushes the thing that I preach the most, home ownership.
Right.
Because now we have less inventory for us to actually be homeowners, and they're forcing us to be renters.
And I wanted to get right there. So Florida is the most expensive state in the country to live, not just because of rent, but insurance,
right,
everything else. Tampa is one of the most expensive places to live in Florida,
Right.
which means Tampa in the country is very expensive to live. When all these homes are being bought from out of town folks, it leads to a problem in the availability of affordable housing. Talk to me about affordable housing and how we might address that. I don't know if you have a solution because the rest of us ain't, but what do we do about this? What do we do? Just skyrocketing rent, no place that people can afford. What do we do about this?
Which is interesting that Tampa would be outpacing places like New York and LA with their rent increase. But if I tell anybody first, how do we define affordable?
Bingo.
Who defines what's affordable? And that's been an issue of mine for the last, maybe 5 or 6 years. We have this talking point. Affordable housing to me has just seemed like a talking point, but the numbers that's out there aren't affordable for the average folk that live, especially in the Tampa Bay area. When we look at our average income, that doesn't equate to being able to purchase the average home in the city of Tampa at $399,000 or $400,000.
Right.
How do you make that affordable?
What you just said is the median home price.
Absolutely.
$390,000, $400,000. That is not
in the city.
The average.
In the city of Tampa.
Yeah, that's not affordable.
So what creates an affordable product? So if you don't have incentives for builders to build affordable products, if you don't have incentives for buyers as far as the great qualified down payment assistance program, you will not create affordable housing.
Bingo. The market can't do this unhelped.
Oh, absolutely.
The market is just what the market is. It's and as you said, we got all these out of town people moving in. They got a bunch of cash. The median home price is almost $400,000. The market can't do this. It needs help from the government.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Now, will that happen?
Right.
Well, I take that back. In some eyes, in the government's eyes, they've already submitted help. But is it really helping?
Right. No,
not at all.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be the most expensive place to live in the country.
Not at all. It seems like we keep dangling this carrot in front of our faces, and we're never able to reach it.
No, it's
like that
Bugs
Bunny
I've been talking
cartoon.
about affordable housing since I've been running for office, and that's been a long time. It's a talking
Well, when you
point.
define affordable housing, then talk to me. When I can get someone to tell me what makes a property affordable, then I can probably have a better conversation with you.
No, I agree. Talk about, clearly you know your stuff, because I poked at you about affordable housing, and I didn't even warn you about that, and you did well on that, but you know your stuff, and that's why you're the head of kind of the local branch of this national organization. Talk about NARAB some. What is it? How'd you get involved, and what are you doing in it now?
No, absolutely. I learned about the National Association of Real Estate Brokers in 2013 or 14, and was astonished to find out it was founded right here in Tampa in 1947, July 29th, 1947. So we are celebrating 75 years of existence right now. So I'm super excited about that opportunity to have our national convention come to Tampa. But in 1947, they wouldn't allow blacks to become members of NAR. So we weren't allowed to be realtors. So we had to create our own organization, and we consider ourselves realtists. And from my research, it wasn't until 1963 or 64, Ben Slayton was the first black to become a member of NAR, which opened the doors for the rest of us. But our need was, our motto was out of democracy in housing. We want to make sure that everyone, not just black, but all minorities have an opportunity to fair and equitable housing practices. I don't know how deep you want to go, but I also...
On this podcast, go ahead, brother.
I curtail that to a lot of, in my personal opinion, 1933, 34, coming out of the New Deal, that's when the 30-year mortgage was created. And unfortunately, 98% of those loans went to white Americans.
Okay, stop right there. If home ownership is the biggest driver of wealth, and if black folks couldn't get mortgages until past that to the 1960s and 50s, now we're talking about why we have this huge wealth disparity,
gap. Absolutely,
and income disparity that's racial.
Absolutely,
because the government perpetuated it. But you got to, in Florida, maybe we can't talk about this because critical race theory, you're not allowed to talk about it. But this is my podcast, so we can talk about it. But that's really important that we talk about stuff like that.
No, absolutely.
Black folks couldn't get a mortgage until a certain point. Home ownership's the biggest thing that drives wealth. So the two things build upon itself. And now you wonder why black families and white families have this huge wealth gap. And to fix it, you can't fix that by just saying now everybody can get a mortgage. That doesn't fix it. What fixes it is give extra to the folks who were overburdened historically.
Well, and I tell folks all the time, policy created the problem. Policies are going to have to get us out the problem.
Bingo.
And to your point, we have this mindset. Well, now everybody can get a home, but
So it's fixed.
It's fixed, right? It's fixed, right? But
meanwhile, the wealth disparity that was created by that problem continues to get
absolutely. And you got also traditionally because we haven't owned homes, our median income is a lot lower. Our credit scores traditionally are a lot lower. They created what they call the CRA Act in '77, where the lenders was supposed to create products for the communities that they serve. That was never enforced. So if I have a community with lower income, lower credit scores, why should I have to be held to the same standard as the other side of the community that has a 700 credit score that's making $100,000 a year? And we're still in our $17,000 to $20,000 a year range. So I think that because the government has not held their feet to the fire, we're still going to be in this situation. Coming out of this turn, I think every other ethnic group was moving up in home ownership rate. We were the only ethnic group either staying still or declining. So we have some issues, and if we don't consider this a state of emergency, as a people, if we don't consider this a housing state of emergency, our net worth will be zero at some point.
It is all based on the home ownership and where you might live, where that home might be, where Black folks are sometimes concentrated in terms of where we live, where we may be being pushed to other places. Because, here in Tampa, for example, it was not favorable to live by the river at one point.
Right.
And so all Black folks live by the river.
Right.
Now it's the place to be, and guess where you can't find us?
That's the same push that they're having now. The inner city, the East Tampa, the Sulphur Springs area, where my family grew up at. Now when gentrification is starting to take over the West Tampa area, we can't even afford to live in those areas anymore. I saw a home the other day. I'm not going to mention the street in East Tampa, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, maybe 1,300 square feet for $479. And you mean to tell me that's affordable?
I live in Seminole Heights, and in some of those places, man, you'll see a little house. It's astronomical, and you know what's going on.
But it was actually absolutely designed. And again, I always go back to that year of 33, 34. That's when they created the FHA manual, and they decided to put highways to divide certain neighborhoods. It was absolutely a design that was created by the government. And if the government is not going to be intentional about reversing some of those policies, how do we see a way out?
And again, I'm going to repeat this. You cannot address the problem just by saying, okay, everything's even now. Everyone can get a mortgage done. That doesn't fix the 80 years.
Right. Or more.
That we weren't able to get equitable mortgages.
So the big talking point now is diversity and inclusion, but they leave out equity. Yeah, everybody got a DNI, a diversity and inclusion, but we need the equity as well. That's going to be the most important piece to fixing this problem.
No, I agree. Okay, I hijacked your segment about NARAB. I'm sorry, Tom. And you were talking about it, but what's your leadership role in it and all that good stuff? No, this is what y'all are talking about.
Right. You didn't hijack it, because everything that I'm talking about is NARAB, which is why we were created, which is why we're still relevant today in 2022. I am the local board president of the Tampa chapter, which is the Bay Area Association of Realtors. We have about 90, a little bit over between 90 and 100 chapters across the country that are pioneers for the same subjects that we're talking about. We want to make sure that not only we create more Black homeowners, but we also want to bring representation in the industry. I think out of all the real estate agents in the country, we make up about between 5 and 6%. When it comes to our mortgage professionals, probably about 1%. Now, let's not even talk about the appraisers. You can't find a Black appraiser, so which is why we're having a situation now where our homes are being appraised a lot less than our non-Hispanic white counterparts with similar properties. We have to have the conversation with our sellers to take pictures off the wall in 2022.
People don't know it's a Black-owned home.
In 2022, we have to have the conversations with our sellers to take their family pictures off the wall to make sure we get a fair appraisal.
Mm-hmm. Well, talk about, I know you have a big event coming up. Talk about that and the significance of that and all that good stuff.
Oh, no, absolutely,
we
man.
done dropped all this knowledge on everybody.
That's what we're here for. And yes, 75th anniversary, founded again, July 29th, 1947 here in Tampa, Florida. So we are coming home for our convention. I think as of right now, the numbers, this is probably going to be the largest convention in the history of the organization. We're down at the host hotel, the JW Marriott. We're going to be doing a 75 celebration gala. We have a host of educational activities because, again, we talked about building up agents. So when you come to our conventions, we're going to have a good time. We're going to celebrate each other, but more importantly, we want to educate. That's our goal, to educate and advocate. We teach you how to become a better agent and also how to be a better Vanguard for your community.
I appreciate it. Listen, I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
You know, so like your name says, Vanguard attorneys. We are Vanguard for our community in this home ownership industry.
Right. And it is important, like you said, when you have numbers that are, like you said, 5% that are Black real estate professionals and probably 1% mortgage, organizations like this that incubate those professionals are super important.
Absolutely.
And super necessary.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I get asked when I'm trolled on social media, why do we have these Black organizations? Or why do we have? This is why, because only 5% of real estate professionals are Black. That's why we got to have these incubators.
Representation matters, and you look at the denial rate of our loans are, probably 85% higher than anyone else's, but we don't have representation to produce those loans. And again, we're slowly trying to, swing the pendulum a little bit, but we are so far behind. So if they ask you a question, why is this necessary? It shouldn't be.
Right. Well, and like you said, the appraisal situation. I mean, I read about that.
Right.
Where the homes, the data shows that if a Black-owned, same home. Right. Similar location, similar everything else, similar community demographics, 30% lower in terms of appraisal.
And that's when, you got to,
that's tied to wealth. That's tied to.
The big elephant in the room, man. This country has had a fundamental issue with racism, institutional racism from its inception, and it's still going on to this day.
Well, that's another podcast. Travis, I appreciate you coming on, man. This is important stuff. If you can, give people your contact information. If they want to talk to you, they need help. Give the people your contact information. Right before we
No, absolutely, because I did forget to mention I am the principal broker for Brooks Realty Group, LLC, right here in Tampa, Florida. We can be reached at 813-653-7291. More importantly, if you're a real estate agent out there, a mortgage professional, anybody in the real estate industry, we encourage you to join the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. Our email address is naraptampa@gmail.com, and our website is naraptampa.org. And we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to succeed in this industry.
Well, the final question I want to ask you is, just like everyone thinks they're a lawyer because of Google. Everyone thinks they can be a real estate investor. Right. Because all I got to do on Google is do what they say. Just give a brief on, you need professional help. This is real estate ain't easy. No. You can't get on Google and figure out how to flip houses despite all the seminars people sell. This is hard, and it's important to have a professional help.
Right. I think social media makes everybody look
bingo
successful, right? So
everybody rich flipping properties.
It looks amazing. It looks easy. But I tell folks all the time, I don't fix cars. So I can't take my car to a mechanic and tell them what to do. I can't do that. So you want to make sure that you have someone in your corner. Contracts, just like attorneys. I don't know how to read a law contract. And if I do it myself, I'm liable to go to jail.
You know how to read a real estate contract.
Not only that, it's a lot of individuals that lose a lot of money because they don't want to hire a professional. That's what we're here for. That's why we took the classes. That's why we take continuing education every year. We want to make sure your transaction is as smooth as possible and you have someone in your corner.
Hiring you is up front is cheaper than the back end messing up. It's the same thing with lawyers. Fine, you do whatever you want to do. By the time you come to me to fix the problem, it's much more expensive.
And what's the saying they have? If you represent yourself, you have a fool for a client. Right. And that sales rings true in real estate. And the problem is, like you said, I get clients that'll call me after they went into the contract. They realize they didn't read the fine print, and now they're $20,000, $30,000 that they're about to lose. Now what you want me to do?
What can you do about that? Right.
You're going to pay up front.
Right. No, it makes, that's why I wanted to mention that. Brother, I appreciate it. Travis Brooks here. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time. And Travis, I want to, like I said before we got on air, I want to have you back on when we get closer to the NARAB event, just to highlight it some, because this is really important. These types of organizations, as I said, and the job they do to incubate professionals and add to some of those numbers that we were talking about.
No, absolutely. And those dates are August 2nd through the 6th.
We're going to get you back.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vanguards of Democracy is funded and produced by Vanguard Attorneys, a local personal injury law firm serving the Tampa Bay area with ingenuity and an indomitable work ethic. Don't forget to follow Vanguards of Democracy on YouTube or download episodes on your favorite podcast streaming services like iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And lastly, we're excited to announce that we're launching our new landing page, www.vanguardsofdemocracy.com, where you'll be able to ask questions, recommend guests or topics, and stay up to date with news and announcements. It'll be great. If you know how to bookmark a website, this is the one that'll make it worth it. Thank you.